In this particular sounder base example, I have the first floor of a hotel that has suites as well as single rooms. In each one of the suites there are 2 sleeping areas that will have a smoke detector and a sounder base installed. Each one of the single rooms will have a smoke detector and sounder base. There are also smoke detectors in the hallways as well as notification in the hallways that activate on a general alarm. General alarm is triggered either by pull stations or water flows in the building, as well as smoke detectors in the common areas or hallways. In this example, we will just be looking at the sounder bases and how they are programmed into this type of scenario. In this particular example, I have already done some setup in the programming software. So right now you're looking at my points list. As you can see here, I have some points already set up, and in our example, I'm not showing the main lobby, but we'll assume that that is below the first floor, which is what we're looking at. And the main lobby's got 2 notification circuits. The first floor has a hallway going between the rooms, and we have 2 notification circuits used there. I also have 2 notification circuits set up to power my addressable sounder bases, that is circuits 7 and 8. I'm using a PFC 6800 as well. I also have 2 circuits on my built-in power supply monitoring the water flow and tamper for the sprinkler zone on that first floor. Underneath that, I have all of my SLC points. If I scroll down here, I've got my suites. In each suite there are 2 sleeping areas, and each area has a smoke detector that is installed on a sounder base. So for each suite I have 4 addresses, so there's suite 2, 4, 6, and 8. Once those are done, I have each individual sleeping room, and each room has a smoke detector and a sounder base as well. So all the points are set up and labeled already in the points list. Moving to the Zones tab, I have done some initial setup here as well. I have my general alarm zone already set up, as well as my supervisory and fire drill zones. These 3 zones are commonly used in every program that you will use with these fire alarm control panels. In general alarm, I have all of my built-in power supply points. By default they are all there, and all of those are there still currently, except for the tamper, which I have moved to my supervisory zone. In fire drill, I currently have my main floor and my first floor notification. So this is the notification in the hallway as well as in the lobby of my hotel. Now it's up to you whether you want the sounder bases in your hotel rooms to activate on a fire drill. That's kind of project specific, so you can decide that and put those into the zone if you wish. Alright, we're going to start with, and I've already added these zones and named them, we're going to start with Suite 2. So remember has 2 sleeping areas, and each area has a smoke detector and a sounder base installed in it. Now the idea here is that we want, when the smoke detector in the unit activates, we want both sounders in both sleeping areas to activate. So I go over to my points list. We've got both of our smoke detectors. Those are my inputs in each of the sleeping areas, and when either one of those activates, I want my sounders to both activate. So I will drag and drop my sounders into that as well. So at this point, that suite is done. When either smoke activates, the sounders turn on. The sounders are given an address. They supervise and control what's going through the sounder, so the ANSI circuit does not have to go in here. It's already connected to it. When the sounder is supposed to turn on, it just lets the ANSI pattern through. It also supervises that circuit. Now some of the things you do need to consider when setting up any of these rooms are some of the characteristics of your zone. So moving up to the top here, I have this defaulted to an alarm zone, which means that when either one of these smokes activates, it's going to send an alarm signal to Central Station as well as to the fire alarm control panel. That's common. The other option you could do is set this up as a supervisory zone. When you do that, you want to make sure your smoke detectors are indicated as supervisories. Now when this happens, when the smoke detectors activate, they will send a supervisory signal to the fire alarm control panel. They'll also send a supervisory signal to the Central Station. In many cases, a supervisory does not roll to fire trucks. So this scenario is best used when there is a fire alarm control panel that is monitored 24 hours a day on site. For example, a hotel lobby or a hotel usually has the fire panel very close to the reception desk, and that is usually there's a person there all the time. Again, this needs to be cleared with the authority having jurisdiction, the AHJ, the building owner, as well as the fire marshal if that is not the AHJ. But you can set them up as a supervisory. Now the other thing that you can do is that if you would like the smoke detector or the sounder base to be self-restoring, such that it actually turns off if the smoke is not present at the smoke detector anymore, you can do that as well by making this a non-latching zone. So that means that instead of having to hit reset at the panel, the sounder will actually restore when the smoke clears from the smoke detector. So that's another option. Again, those things are going to be dependent on the type of project and what the owner and the AHJ approve. So those are your options that you have to think about. Alright, so Suite 2 is done, so we're going to move on to Suite 4, and this is going to be identical. So we go over to our points list and we capture all of our Suite 4 points, which are 2 smokes and 2 sounders, and we drag and drop them into this zone. Now these smoke detectors that I'm putting into these individual, like Suite 4, these smoke detectors are not in the general alarm zone, which means that they will not trigger the notification in the hallway or the main lobby. They're just going to turn the sounders on that are in this particular unit. That same is true for Suite 2. It's going to be true for all of these. I do not have the smoke detectors in the general alarm zone, which means that they will not trigger the notification in the general alarm area, the main lobby and the first floor hallway. Alright, so I've now set up all of those suites. They are done. I'm moving to my single rooms. Room 101 is the first one that I've got. And in this particular room there's 1 smoke detector and 1 sounder, so this is the same. We just drag and drop those into the zone. For each one of these rooms I do this, so we're just going to go ahead and get these all set up. And I am selecting multiple points by holding the Shift key down or the Control key down as I click, so that I can drag and drop multiple points into this zone, which kind of saves a little bit of time here. And again, I could be setting these up as supervisory zones. I can adjust whether they are latching or non-latching when they are a supervisory zone. At this point I'm going to keep these all alarm zones, but those are things that you can change when you are working with this software. Alright, so a few more here. Now once I get these done, the other thing that we're going to have to consider is that the sounders, when let's say the water flow activates in the building, or maybe somebody were to pull a pull station in the building, that is a general alarm, and we would want those sounders to turn on and wake those folks up that are in those sleeping rooms. So currently the sounders are only activating when the smokes in the units turn on. But at the same time we would want those sounders to turn on if there is a general alarm event. So I'm going to go up to my general alarm zone. Right now they are not in there, and I'm going to capture all of my sounder bases and bring them into general alarm. To do that I'm going to quickly just get those here by filtering by function. So I can easily see the sounder bases. Here they all are. And I'm just going to select all of these by clicking on the top one, hold the Shift key down, and drag and drop those into here. Let's see, I'm going to hide that again. We'll get this list back. There we go. And so now what I've done is I've assigned my sounder bases in all of my rooms to my general alarm, so that let's say when this water flow activates, all of my sounder bases will turn on and wake those units up, even if the smokes in those units have not activated. Alright, so that is something else you can do as well. Alright, so now the other thing that sometimes comes up as wanting to be done with sounder bases is you would want to, let's say for example, the smoke in room 103 is active and the smoke in 105 is active. We want the general alarm to activate. So what we're going to do is go to our Cross Zones tab, and when we get here what we can do is say what input zones we want 2 of these input zones, we can select up to 8 to be active in order to turn on an output zone. So I'm going to show you what that means here. I'm just going to say we're going to enable this, and my first input zone is going to be Suite 2. Alright, so now on its own, when the smoke detectors in Suite 2 activate, they turn on the sounders in that zone, in the Suite 2 zone. Okay, so that's already happening. But what I'm saying is when those smoke detectors are active, and let's say the smoke detectors in Suite 4 are active, so when I cross these, I need both of them to be active. What I'm going to do is turn my output zone on of general alarm. So when the smokes, it just has to be one. So when one smoke is active in Suite 2 and one smoke or 2 smokes are active in Suite 4, I turn on my general alarm. So you can continue to make cross zones such that when you have devices active in a suite and then in another suite you can get the general alarm to turn on. This application is going to be project specific, and you'll need to work with your owner and your ASJ to determine if this is something that they would like. You can also go down to the rooms, such that when one room is active and another room is active, then the general alarm turns on. It is most common that you would cross 2 zones. You can cross up to 8 zones, as you can see here. In this case, when all the zones have been crossed, such that when each input zone has something active, then the specified output zone will turn on. Alright, so we've got our cross zoning, we've got our zones set up for each of our suites, we've got our sounder bases activating on general alarm, as well as when the smokes activate in the units themselves. So that is a short example on sounder bases. For more information on sounder bases, you can check the installation guide that comes with the device. Also check our website for other examples on programming.